Gingrich slams Comey, McCabe, and Bombshell expose. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich called out disgraced FBI officials James Comey and Andrew McCabe this week, blasting the Bureau bosses for their outright dishonesty and self-serving reckless behavior. It is very sobering and a little frightening to realize that the top two officials of the Federal Bureau of Investigations were dishonest. You don't have to believe me. You only need to read these three sources: the memorandum written by Deputy Director Rod Rosenstein and led by Comey's firing, the Office of Inspector General's reporting investigations of McCabe's actions as Deputy Director, and Stuart Baker's recent article, The Low Tragedy of Andrew McCabe. The former speaker goes on to highlight Comey and McCabe's sordid history of troubling behavior, detailing the serious mistakes made by the FBI officials throughout the 2016 investigation into Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified materials. Screen Hoopla thinks that they just did it on purpose. Rosenstein's memorandum outlining the serious mistakes made by Comey during the 2016 Clinton email investigation concluded that Comey was wrong to overstep his authority as FBI director and announced his recommendation that the investigation be closed during a press conference. According to Rosenstein, Comey's public recommendation to the Justice Department was an abuse of Comey's power and an overextension of his authority. The FBI's role in a federal investigation is to determine if there is enough evidence to prosecute a case, while the Attorney General designates authority to a federal prosecutor who then makes a prosecutorial decision. Rosenstein, quoting former Attorney General Michael Mulcahy, who served under President George W. Bush, stated that Comey stepped way outside of his job in disclosing the recommendation in that fashion because the FBI director doesn't make that decision. The memo also quotes President Obama's Attorney General Eric Holder, who asserted that Comey's decision was incorrect. It violated long-standing Justice Department policies and traditions, and Holder determined that it ultimately broke with fundamental principles and negatively affected public trust in both the Justice Department and the FBI. And deputy attorneys generals quoted throughout the memo strongly objected to Comey's actions, bringing Rosenstein to the conclusion that almost everyone agrees that the director made serious mistakes. It is one of the few issues that unites people of diverse perspectives. Rosenstein came to the conclusion that trust in the FBI could not be restored until it has a director who understands the gravity of the mistakes and pledges never to repeat them. This was the report President Trump received just before firing Comey. More recently, the report issued by the Office of Inspector General investigating the allegations directed towards former Deputy Director McCabe further weakened public and congressional confidence in the FBI. It reaffirmed that Comey's improper ways were not the activities of an outlier, but more than likely representative of the norm. Trump is fuming. Rosenstein and Mueller have been caught in a sting operation to impeach him. This is the kind of story that should be leading the news on everyday media outlets, but the mainstream media is controlled by leftists who hate our president and want him gone. Most people are aware that Paul Manafort, who ran President Trump's campaign for 3 months, was targeted by Special Counsel Robert Mueller in the Trump-Russia witch hunt. Manafort is being used as a scapegoat, and all Mueller can find on him is some shady dealings with the 2014 when he was working with the Ukrainian president, who he had been hired to help get elected. In fact, the charges are so flimsy that his attorneys demanded Mueller release the orders of his investigative powers in the case to the public, which they knew would incriminate Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Mueller. This was a sting operation from the beginning, and Mueller took the bait. The exact order from the DOJ website reads, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein announced the appointment of former Department of Justice official and FBI Director Robert S. Mueller to serve as special counsel to oversee the previously confirmed FBI investigation of Russian government efforts to influence the 2016 presidential election and related matters. This was dated Wednesday, May 17, 2017. The reason Rosenstein could not give Mueller power to investigate Trump is simple. There had been no evidence found that President Trump or anyone in his campaign had done anything illegal with Russians or anyone else, except we now know, thanks to Manafort's attorneys, that the rat Rosenstein did file a secret scope of investigative powers that included Trump as the target in May of 2017. This secret order says links or coordinated between the Russian government and the campaign of Donald Trump, matters that may arise from the investigation of the Russian government and the campaign of Donald Trump, and other matters within the scope of 28 CFR-6.4. This order, including Trump as the target of an investigation, is totally illegal. Why? No evidence ever existed against Trump. Rosenstein was setting up Trump to be impeached. What else could it be? Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, it gets worse. In August of 2017, Mueller knew that they are all in trouble and needed Rosenstein to amend these orders dictating that we can investigate again. So what was the big problem with Mueller? Well, and you're going to love this, we know Mueller was hired by Rosenstein and the deep state rats like this best buddy James Comey to get Trump impeached and to cover their tracks and crimes of colluding with Russia and spying on President Trump. The Inspector General Michael Horowitz even has just informed him or them of his discovery of the conspiracy behind the DOJ and the FBI plan against Donald Trump. On July 20th of 2017, Horowitz gets the text messages. Horowitz informs Mueller there is evidence of a conspiracy evident within his own team that had to be an oh my gosh moment for the deep state rats and for Robert Mueller. Quickly, the investigative team needs Rosenstein to narrow the investigation. The last thing the special counsel team needed was an open door to investigate corrupt officials within their own ideological ranks. Lord knows where that would have ended up. Of course, Rosenstein has the new orders all partially redacted, of course, so we cannot see exactly what they said. But we know enough that it is highly suspicious for a new set of rules to be given to a special counsel months later. It's plain and simple. Rosenstein is also dirty. He has been working in concert with Mueller to cover up crimes committed by the deep state rats against President Donald Trump all along. Trump should fire Mueller and Rosenstein now. I don't care if the Democrats go nuts. Let them. This witch hunt is out of control and it's costing U.S. taxpayers millions upon millions of dollars. I'm glad the president is fuming about this. It's time to shut it down and go after every one of those deep state rats. Either we are a country of law and order or we are...
Fox News Alert now. New calls on Capitol Hill to investigate former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former FBI Director James Comey, and several other former high-ranking officials. Let's go outnumbered overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. A group of 11 Republican lawmakers have written a letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, urging yet another criminal investigation in Washington and outlining a long list of allegations, including bias against President Trump. On top of the claims made against Hillary Clinton and James Comey, the letter points fingers at ex-Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates. For more on this developing story, let's bring in Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge, live from Washington. And I've got my phone. I've been going through all of these letters, and now the latest of them. There's a lot of material here.
That's right. There's been a lot of action this morning, Harris. And according to this new letter from 11 House Republicans to the Attorney General, FBI Director, and the U.S. Attorney who is handling requests for records for Congress, they're asking for a criminal investigation of at least 5 key players in the Clinton email and Russia investigations. On the former FBI Director James Comey, the lawmakers focus on his statements about recommending against criminal charges in the Clinton email case and his testimony about the decision. They allege there may be violations of of federal statutes on lying and perjury. The allegations against Hillary Clinton relate to the funding of political opposition research that formed the basis of the Trump dossier. The lawmakers allege that payments to the firm Fusion GPS may constitute violations of election law and campaign contributions by foreign nationals. On former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was fired for lying about his role in a media leak about the Clinton Foundation, lawmakers allege possible violations on statutes about lying, perjury, as well as obstruction of justice. On FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page, both removed by special counsel Robert Mueller from the Russia case after allegations of political bias, lawmakers question whether their actions that allegedly minimized the mishandling of classified information by Clinton and her team amount to obstruction and misleading statements by federal officers. This morning on ABC, Comey was asked about the letter, and he said he was not concerned about any legal exposure.
I know I'm doing a lot of shrugging today, but I haven't read it. I don't know what to make of it. It seems they've been saying that stuff since the Clinton email investigation. A whole lot of that's already being looked at by the Inspector General at the Department of Justice, which is a very good thing. And I don't have any other reaction.
We're reaching out to all of the individuals who are identified in the new letter. Just for some context on Andrew McCabe, when he was fired, his attorney said that that action was inappropriate and malicious and really without factual basis, Harris.
We all know if you write a negative story about Fusion GPS, you never hear from Glenn Simpson again. So I think reporters should consider their sources and also report on their sources. If their sources, for example, Glenn Simpson and Dan Jones are still working with Russians to try to confirm the unconfirmable.
Well, so that's Michael Caputo, former campaign advisor for the Trump team, accusing the media of ignoring facts in favor of staying on Glenn Simpson's good side. Michael Caputo is here to explain the case he was making yesterday. How you doing, Michael? Good morning to you. And well, you're in the middle of all this right now. You're making a case that reporters will not report on Fusion GPS because it will cost them information. What kind of information, Michael?
Well, Dan Jones, who's used to be a Senate Intelligence Committee investigator on the Democrat side, left Congress and started a company called Penn Quarter Group. This group now, according to his testimony, as we read in the House Intelligence Report, he's raised $50 million from about 10 Democratic donors out of California and New York, which narrows it down some, to continue coordinating additional research by Fusion GPS with Christopher Steele, the British spy that the Hillary Clinton campaign hired. And also, by the way, Christopher Steele, as we know, gets all of his information from present and former KGB officers. So we have a Democrat who says he's briefing all the Intelligence Committee Democrat investigators. Also, his former boss, Senator Feinstein, is the Democratic leader of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which has turned their hearings into absolute perjury traps. Well, so he also says he's briefing the FBI, which he tries to intimate includes the special counsel.
What you're trying to explain is how this thing goes round and round. How are the American people supposed to understand this, do you think, Michael, based on your experience?
Well, you know, I worked in Congress for a while, and then I worked with the media very closely when I ran the House of Representatives Radio and Television Gallery. It took me a little while to figure out this little, two-step that they do. But the reporters work very closely with the left on the Hill and the left in like, for example, in the Obama administration. And these groups are organized and funded by high-dollar Democratic donors. The problem that reporters have is once they get addicted to these regular briefings that they're getting from Fusion GPS, if they write a story about how, for example, Dan Jones is now funding Fusion GPS to work with spies for $50 million, nobody's writing that except for the Federalist, because nobody wants to. If you write a bad story about Glenn Simpson, that, it's like somebody cut off your drugs. So if you want to be involved in the continuing Russia collusion delusion, you can't do anything bad.
Well, I heard your statement. I heard your statement on CNN yesterday that reporters are leaving facts and ethics behind. But I just want to try and figure out what they're not reporting, so that we can get a better embrace of what's happening behind the scenes. And I think all these movements within court and what this judge said last Friday is very interesting. It all needs to be considered so we can understand the context. You, however, have been in the news for a very different reason. You were interviewed by Mueller's team for 3 hours last week. You did a series of interviews. I saw you in every network. And what you laid out, Michael, was how your family's been exposed to what you say is financial ruin. And you make the case that you're not the only one. Now, since you've gone public, have you had any blowback from them? Have you heard from the Mueller team or not?
No, I haven't. But, you know, I'm not in any legal peril. I'm a witness, not a target or a subject. And they know that. And they say they watch me on they told me they watch me on TV, which to me means be really careful what you say. But if they bring me back, it's only really to punish me with more legal fees. And now that the Trump supporters across the country have gone to my GoFundMe pages and been so generous, I'm not afraid of them anymore. And I'll tell you, the worst thing, Bill, is that I'm just the only person out there talking about this. There are another dozen or more people, middle-class families, whose dad or mom has been dragged into this, and they're racking up legal fees, and they're afraid to talk too, because they don't know how they're going to pay for it, and they think if they talk in the media that they're going to be hauled in again and punished with more legal fees. Because if you're not going to be investigated, if you're not going to be indicted, if you're not going to jail, they're going to break you financially, because it's about ruining every single one of us.
To be clear, you were on TV making a point last week that if you think Russian collusion, at least the questioning of it, is dead, you're wrong. Because all the questions directed at you centered on that. Is that correct? And were those questions